Howdy. My name is Connor Thorberg, and I'll be talking about Kashmir bee virus and its effects on honeybees' reproductive rates. So, Kashmir bee virus is a viral infection that affects bees at all stages of their development. And while the disease does not result in a lot of quick deaths within the colony, it can have effects on how bees grow, develop, and their reproductive continuity of the hive itself. Through studying the origins of the disease, the symptoms, and the way it affects the reproductive rates as well as the lives of bees, we can pinpoint just how much of an issue Kashmir bee virus indirectly or directly affects the reproductive health of a colony. So my question is, how does Kashmir bee virus cause lower reproductive rates in honeybee hives? So where does this disease come from? So this disease is originally carried by varroa mites, and these mites they're basically parasites that attach to bees and feed off of parts of their bodies in order to get blood and nutrients out of the bee itself. So it's just a parasitical organism that is going to be feeding on the honeybee itself. And obviously parasites, like if as humans we're not going to like those as much either. And so if it's on a honeybee, it's going to carry disease, it's going to weaken them, it's going to do a lot of bad things to the bee itself. So what we have is two figures to the left, and on the one to the far left, we see that KBV is on the top right corner, and it is extremely, extremely tiny. So this measures the amount of research that has really been found on these viruses. And the one next to it is deformed wing virus, which obviously is talking about the bee's wings. But KBV has not had a lot of research because it is really, really hard to detect. And that's mainly because it's spread mainly through oral, fecal, and body contact. So the form to the or the file to the right, the figure to the right, it has oral, it has fecal, body contact, venereal, vector mediated, and queen to eggs. As we can see, the pluses and the minuses mean something. So the pluses mean that they are caused by this. So like if KBV, we see that there's pluses on oral and fecal. That means that oral and fecal do transmit the disease. Body contact, the BCS, it means sometimes the body contact can cause the disease. There is no venereal transmission, but there is vector mediated through mites. And then queen to egg, which is going to really, really infect bees. That's a vertical transmission. So that's the one that you can't really even mediate. Is if a queen is infected, she's going to transmit her eggs to, or she's going to transmit the disease to the eggs in themselves. So what are the symptoms? So the problem about KBV is that they can be broken up into so many different symptoms, and they're not linear at all. They're not sequential. They're just so sporadic, and that is such a problem with this disease because it's extremely hard to detect because it can be completely asymptomatic the entire time. So it would be like me having a disease and then whenever it's fatal, I start getting symptoms. That's kind of how it is for the bees. So the biggest one that you're going to see, the most visual one, is going to be trembling and fatigue. They're going to be moving slower. They're going to be able to fly. They're going to be trembling. This causes them to not really be able to move. It causes them not to be able to really fly at all, and they're going to lose the ability to work. This is obviously a problem because worker bees are the backbone of the hive, and if there's no worker bees to work, then there is no hive itself. As you can see in the picture to the left, sick bees will often cluster together, and after a while, they just won't be able to fly anymore. They'll get that deformed wing virus, and there's often cases of bloating, which bloating's never good. It will cause them to swell, and then they'll start to develop dysentery, and obviously that is fatal. Another symptom is they'll get greasy and hairless, which that's what causes their wings to be completely useless, which is similar to the other previous symptoms with fatigue and stuff. So at that point, they're going to be basically paralyzed, and like that paralysis is not good for a hive. This is extremely similar to acute bee paralysis, which is a very, very prevalent disease compared to Kashmir bee virus, and these are almost genetically identical except for like a RNA disparity between the two viruses. So Another problem with this virus is that it is extremely undetectable. It can just slip through the cracks. So you have the data figure to the left. You have all of these different bee viruses. You have ABPV. You have deformed wing virus. You have all of these. The paralysis, and then you have Kashmir bee virus to the top left. So as you can see, comparatively to the rest of them, it's extremely hard to detect these infection rates in these hives. So this is mainly because of the asymptomatic nature of the virus itself, and it just further causes more problems within the reproductive system as well as just within the hive health in general, because you can't treat what you can't detect. So reproductive data that we have the brood and larvae can be infected by a KBV, and that's obviously a huge problem because that's your young, that's your young of the hive, and if this happens, the colony will probably soon collapse. But according to scholars, KBV is extremely lethal to adults especially, and then obviously to larvae itself as they're very underdeveloped. And whenever these adults die, it leaves the younger bees, the ones that are going to be nurses or younger workers, to take care of the queen, and it just spreads them thin. It basically works them to death. And when this happens, it causes the brood to not get as much attention because they're going to be focusing on the queen. And then if the queen herself is affected, the colony is like the entire brood is going to be infected because of that vertical transmission. If the queen is infected, every single egg that she lays will have this virus with them, and that is not good. But as you can see to the left, you still have this problem of detection. The symptoms being so irregular can just cause the hive to completely collapse. And if you can't detect it, the virus is just going to flourish as it spreads primarily through fecal and oral transmission. If you're eating the food that's going to get you sick, you can't stop that if you don't have any symptoms, and so that will cause it to spread from worker to queen to brood to nurse and then the entire colony will eventually collapse. So the significance, what is the significance of this? The significance is the disease is extremely undetectable. It can potentially destroy the futures of hives and colonies. The workers, nurses, and queens can all be infected, causing the transmission of the virus to the broods, especially from the queens with that vertical transmission. Stalling generations of bees from being born and potentially eliminating bees at the source. If the brood is infected, the larva is infected, everyone's infected, and that will just continuously wipe out all of the bee population. And the role that this has in the reduction of bee reproduction rates is catastrophic. If the queen herself gets infected, the entire hive is done. You can't raise a colony with this virus, as it will just continuously, slowly kill one bee after another. And if that happens, the future of the hive it's abysmal. So to conclude, we talked about how Kashmir bee virus is a very, very serious virus that affects honeybees. And it attacks through oral feasting and varroa mites, as well as fecal matter and vertical transmission from queen to the brood itself. This disease, if it's not unchecked, can wipe out entire colonies by killing off workers, nurses who are integral in caring for the brood and the queen, causing the hive's future to be in danger. And while data shows that this does not necessarily target the reproductive system itself, it can leave, like, the fertility of the hive starts with the queen, and if the queen is producing a brood that cannot sustain itself, then the hive will collapse. Thank you, and gig 'em.